You ever walk into a place where every stare already decided who you are? That was Jordan Wells on his first morning at Brookhaven High, a name whispered in the crowd, a face everyone saw but no one knew. His steps were steady, his head held just high enough to mask the weight pressing on his chest. New school, new faces, same quiet judgment. The hallways buzzed with the usual chaos. Lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, laughter that wasn't always friendly. But beneath that noise, Jordan felt the silence that follows someone different. The kind of silence that measures you before you've said a word. He'd lived through it before. This time, he told himself, would be no different. Keep calm, stay small, just blend in. But fate had other plans. At the far end of the hall leaned a group of boys who treated the school like their private empire. They called themselves the Crew. Everyone else just called them Trouble. Their leader, Logan Pierce, wore arrogance like a second skin, broad shoulders, confident grin, and the kind of charm that rotted once you got close enough to smell the fear he fed on. His crew laughed too loud, walked too slow, always scanning for weakness. And that morning, their eyes locked on Jordan. He wasn't flashy. Just a black hoodie, a worn backpack, quiet confidence in how he moved, like every step was measured. Logan nudged his friend, whispering something that made them all laugh. The kind of laughter that doesn't fade. It sharpens. Jordan didn't need to turn to know. He'd felt this kind of moment before. The test, the targeting, the tightening of air right before someone decides to make you their story for the day. He twisted his locker dial slowly. Click, click. The sound steadied his breathing. His reflection in the metal door stared back, calm, unreadable, focused. Beneath the hoodie, beneath that stillness, lay something none of them could see, a lifetime of discipline carved through years of early mornings and endless drills. A mind trained to hold control even when the world wanted chaos. The crew's laughter grew louder, the kind that fills a hallway and drains every ounce of warmth from it. Logan's voice cut through the noise, low but sharp. "Hey, new kid, you lost or just too scared to talk?" Jordan didn't turn, didn't blink. Just closed his locker with slow precision. The sound echoed like a punctuation mark, a calm so quiet it made the laughter falter for half a second. He finally looked up, not with fear, but with eyes that saw more than they revealed, and in that instant, the line between predator and prey blurred, just enough to shift the air, because sometimes the quiet ones aren't weak. They're just waiting for the noise to finish. What would you do in his place? Walk away or stand your ground? Tell me below, because what happens next changes everything. You ever notice how a school can sound alive but feel dead? That's how Brookhaven was, a place where noise covered silence, where laughter covered fear. Every student knew the rules here, rules that no teacher wrote down. Rule 1, don't cross the crew. Rule 2, don't stare too long. Rule 3, if something happens, you didn't see it. Jordan learned those rules fast. By his second day, he'd already seen enough. A freshman shoved against a locker for no reason. A girl's book knocked from her hands because she didn't move fast enough. Everyone looked away. Everyone except him. He walked through the halls quietly, head tilted just low enough to seem invisible. But his eyes, they saw everything. The hierarchy. The way fear moved from person to person like static in the air. He didn't speak about it, didn't complain. That wasn't his style. But each glance, each cruel laugh, each nervous shuffle filed itself somewhere deep inside his mind, ordered and controlled. Waiting. Logan Pierce ruled the hallway like he owned it. The teachers called him spirited. The students called him untouchable. His father's money made sure of that. His smile could charm parents and threaten kids in the same breath. When he moved, others made room. Not out of respect, out of habit. Jordan didn't move. He wasn't defiant. He was deliberate. A stillness that felt unfamiliar in a place where everyone flinched first. By lunch, whispers had started to form. That new kid doesn't talk much. He didn't even look scared when Logan passed him. He must not know who he's dealing with. But Jordan knew exactly. He just didn't care. He sat at the edge of the cafeteria, back straight, tray untouched. He wasn't scanning for trouble. He was reading it, watching how Logan's crew moved together like predators circling boredom, each of them searching for the next target that might make their leader laugh, And when their eyes found him again, something in Jordan's stillness pulled them in like gravity. Logan smirked across the room. "That kid's gonna be fun." Jordan didn't flinch. He just looked back, calm, unbothered, eyes steady. Not defiant, but unreadable. That stare alone was enough to unsettle anyone who wasn't used to being studied instead of feared. The bell rang. Chairs scraped. Noise exploded again. But under it all, something had shifted. The crew had picked their next game. And Jordan, whether he liked it or not, was already in it. As he walked to his next class, the hallway seemed longer than usual. Eyes followed, whispers spread. The air had changed. Not because of what had happened, but because of what was coming. Because sometimes, the smallest moments, a stare, a pause, a refusal to bow, are the sparks that light the biggest fires. The third day at Brookhaven began like any other. Morning chatter filled the halls, sneakers squeaked across the floors, and the smell of burnt coffee from the teacher's lounge floated faintly in the air. But beneath that familiar rhythm, something darker pulsed. Quiet anticipation, the kind that builds before a storm. Everyone had heard it by now. The new kid, Jordan Wells, wasn't scared of Logan Pierce. And to the crew, that was enough reason to prove a point. It started small. A bump at the locker. A muttered insult just loud enough to hear. Logan's laughter echoing from down the hall. Jordan ignored it. He wasn't playing their game. He didn't even glance up, though every shove, every sneer scraped against his calm like sandpaper against glass. To the other students, it was the same old show. They moved faster, kept their eyes on the floor, pretending not to see. But pretending didn't make it invisible. It only made it worse. By lunch, Logan decided the silent game wasn't fun anymore. He wanted a reaction. Jordan sat near the back of the cafeteria, tray untouched, reading quietly, or pretending to. Logan's crew approached, the sound of their sneakers dragging like a warning drumbeat. The crowd didn't need an announcement. They already knew what was about to happen. "Hey, Wells," Logan said, dropping his milk carton onto Jordan's table. The liquid splashed across his tray. "You don't talk much, huh? What's the deal? Too good for us?" Jordan didn't move, just exhaled slowly. His voice was steady when he finally spoke. "No deal. I just don't talk to noise." The table went silent. Even Logan blinked. Then came the laughter. Cruel, forced, echoing too loud, the kind that feeds on humiliation. One of the crew leaned in closer, whispering something that made the others chuckle. Then, a nudge. A little shove. Another one. Jordan stayed still. He reached up, wiped the spilled milk off his wrist with a napkin, and looked straight at Logan, his eyes calm. His posture unbroken, and for a fraction of a second, something changed. The laughter thinned. The air shifted. Logan didn't know why his chest tightened, why he suddenly felt smaller under that quiet gaze, but the mask of bravado slipped back quickly. "Guess you'll learn how things work here soon enough," he said, grabbing the edge of Jordan's tray and flipping it onto the floor. Food scattered. Gasps followed. Jordan stood. Not fast, not angry, but deliberate. He looked at the mess, then back at Logan. "I already know how things work," he said quietly. Then he turned and walked out. The cafeteria remained frozen, every eye following him. No shouting, no fight, just silence. And that silence said everything. By the time the next morning came, Brookhaven High buzzed with rumors. Some said the new kid was crazy. Others said he was fearless. The truth, no one really knew, except Jordan Wells himself. He walked through the halls the same way he always did. Calm, precise, eyes forward. But behind that stillness, something had changed. The humiliation from yesterday, the milk, the laughter, the tray crashing to the floor, it replayed in his head like a broken film reel. Not because it hurt, but because it reminded him of every moment he'd once promised himself never to relive. Jordan had learned long ago that restraint was harder than rage. His sensei's voice echoed in memory. "Control isn't about what you can do, Jordan. It's about knowing when not to." And right now, every muscle in his body was focused on that lesson. Logan and his crew strutted through the hallway again, their confidence rebuilt overnight by cheap laughter and pride. They passed Jordan's locker, muttering under their breath. Still quiet, huh? Guess yesterday didn't teach you enough." Jordan didn't look up, just closed his locker, slow and smooth. Click. A sound so soft it shouldn't have meant anything, yet it did. The same kind of sound that signals the start of something irreversible. As he walked toward first period, he caught his reflection in the window, calm, collected, but his eyes burned darker than before. He wasn't angry. He was ready. The day crawled by in fragments. Whispers, glances, the crew's smirks from across classrooms. The tension followed him everywhere like a shadow. But Jordan stayed still, patient, almost eerily so. Every breath measured, every step calculated. By afternoon, Logan was bored again. Bullies crave attention, and Jordan's silence was suffocating him. In gym class, Logan leaned against the wall with his usual smirk. "Hey, Wells," he called across the court, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You planning to hide behind those quiet eyes forever, or are you going to show us you actually exist?" The coach didn't even look up. Teachers had long stopped interfering when Logan spoke. The other students froze, pretending to stretch, pretending not to stare. Jordan didn't respond. He just tightened the strap on his wrist brace, one slow pull, and turned his gaze toward the far corner of the gym. To anyone watching, it looked like he was ignoring the insult. But if you looked closely, if you caught the faint shift in his shoulders, the deepening rhythm of his breathing, you'd know the truth. The storm wasn't gone. It was waiting. Waiting for the final shove. The one that would break the line between patience and action. And in the charged silence of that gym, under the hum of fluorescent lights and the echo of sneakers on varnished wood, you could almost hear the air whisper, "Not much longer." Would you keep holding back? Or let go? Comment what you'd do. Because next, that decision explodes. The sound of the gym whistle sliced through the air, sharp and commanding, but it couldn't cut through the tension building beneath it. The students moved into lines, laughter echoing across the space, fake, nervous laughter that covered the buzz of anticipation. They all felt it. Something was about to happen. The sunlight spilling through the tall windows painted golden stripes across the hardwood floor. Basketballs bounced, sneakers squeaked, the hum of voices filled the background. But every glance drifted toward one place, toward Jordan Wells and the crew. Logan Pierce was grinning, that cocky, dangerous grin that always preceded a show. His friends flanked him like a pack of wolves pretending to be athletes. Their laughter was louder than necessary, their eyes locked on Jordan. They'd picked their stage. They were ready to humiliate him again, this time in front of everyone. Jordan stood near the center of the court, rolling his shoulders slowly, his breathing even. To anyone watching, he looked calm, maybe even indifferent. But inside, everything was shifting. Every ounce of discipline, every hour of training, every word his mentor ever said was lining up inside him like dominoes waiting to fall. Logan tossed a basketball toward him, hard. The ball struck Jordan's chest with a thud, bounced off, and rolled away. "Catch, new guy," Logan said with a smirk. A few kids laughed. Jordan didn't. He bent down, picked up the ball, and stared at it, as if weighing the weight of his next move. Then, slowly, he passed it back. Perfect spiral. Perfect control. Logan caught it, surprised. "Nice throw," he said. "Let's see if you can handle this." Before anyone could react, Logan shoved Jordan's shoulder, not playfully, but hard enough to make a point. The ball rolled away again. The gym went silent. No more laughter. No more chatter. Just the creak of shoes shifting and the distant hum of the ceiling lights. Jordan's head lowered slightly. His breath slowed. His fingers flexed once, then stilled. He'd endured worse. But this moment, this shove, was the line. Not because it hurt, but because of what it meant. He lifted his gaze, eyes locking on Logan's with a steadiness that didn't need words. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was promise. Logan, misreading it, smirked wider and shoved again. That was the mistake. Jordan's body moved before thought. Clean, precise, automatic. A pivot on the heel, a subtle shift of weight, and Logan's balance evaporated. The next sound was thunder, the slap of his back hitting the floor. Gasps rippled through the gym. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then one of Logan's friends lunged, fists clenched, and Jordan flowed. A turn, a sidestep, a grip. The boy's arm bent just enough to drop him without injury. Another tried from behind, but Jordan spun low, sweeping his legs clean out from under him. Every move was a statement. Control, not chaos. Power, not rage. The air filled with gasps, sneakers scraping, the heavy sound of bodies hitting polished wood. Within seconds, it was over. The crew was scattered, groaning, winded, wide-eyed, and Jordan stood at the center of it all, still breathing steady, his stance unshaken. He didn't speak. He didn't brag. He just looked down at Logan, who stared up from the floor in disbelief, the unspoken realization dawning in his eyes. They had picked the wrong target. The crowd stayed silent. Even the teacher, frozen mid-whistle, couldn't find words. Jordan exhaled once, slowly, and stepped back. He didn't need to say a thing. The moment said it all. The sound of Logan's body hitting the floor still echoed across the gym. Heavy, final, unforgettable. For a moment, time didn't move. No laughter, no words. Just silence so deep it felt like the whole school had stopped breathing. The crew that once ruled Brookhaven's halls now lay scattered, bent over, gasping, clutching ribs and bruised pride. The same hands that used to shove others aside were trembling now. The same mouths that used to sneer were speechless. Jordan Wells didn't move. He stood calm, centered, eyes locked on the floor as if measuring the space between control and chaos. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. No fury, no triumph, just stillness. Every student watching could feel it. Something bigger than a fight had just happened. This wasn't about dominance. It was about balance being restored. Logan, still on the ground, tried to speak, a half-formed curse lost between shock and fear. He looked up at Jordan with wide eyes, the realization settling in. The boy he mocked wasn't prey. He was precision, quiet, calculated, unbreakable. Jordan finally turned. One slow movement, deliberate, graceful. He walked toward the center of the court, each step echoing louder than applause. The crowd parted instinctively as if the air itself demanded it. Logan's voice cracked. "You think this makes you tough?" Jordan didn't look back. "No," he said quietly. "It makes me done." The words hung in the air like smoke. Not shouted, not angry, just true. And somehow, that truth hit harder than any punch could have. The gym teacher, finally shaken out of his shock, rushed forward. "What's going on here?" But even he knew the answer. He saw the fear in Logan's eyes, the calm in Jordan's, the truth in the silence that followed. Students began whispering, voices small at first, then spreading like ripples. He didn't even look mad. He could have hurt them worse, but he didn't. He was in control the whole time. By the time the bell rang, the story had already begun to spread. Down the halls, through the classrooms, across every whispered conversation. The legend of the quiet new kid who stood his ground without losing his peace. As the students filed out, Logan's crew tried to pull themselves up. Pride bruised more than bone. Their eyes darted nervously toward Jordan, but he never looked their way again. That was the final defeat. Not the pain, not the embarrassment, but being completely dismissed. He didn't need validation. He didn't need a crowd to cheer. He had already won in the only way that mattered, by proving control was stronger than cruelty. And as he slung his backpack over one shoulder and walked toward the exit, the sound of sneakers and whispers followed him like a quiet anthem of respect. If you felt that moment, when silence finally spoke louder than violence, type "respect over fear" in the comments. Let's see how many still believe control is real strength. The gym doors creaked open, sunlight spilling across the polished floor. Jordan stepped through it, out of chaos into calm. Behind him, a fallen empire of arrogance. Ahead, peace that only the disciplined ever earn. But this story wasn't done yet, because every fall leaves a shadow, and some people can't stand living in it. The next morning, Brookhaven High sounded different. The halls still buzzed with chatter, but beneath it all was something new, a pause. The kind of pause that follows change when people start watching instead of assuming. Word of what happened in the gym had spread faster than any rumor before it. By first bell, every classroom, every group chat, every lunch table whispered the same name, Jordan Wells. He walked through the hallway the same way he always did, quiet, collected, unhurried. But the difference wasn't in him. It was in them. The eyes that once glanced past him now lingered. The laughter that used to follow him had vanished. Where there had been arrogance, now there was silence. And where there had been fear, now there was respect. Logan and his crew were nowhere near their usual spot by the lockers. When they finally appeared, they didn't walk in a pack anymore. Their swagger was gone, replaced by something unfamiliar: caution. Even the way they looked at Jordan carried hesitation, as if they were still processing the fact that the untouchable had been touched. Jordan didn't gloat. He didn't even look their way, because for him, it had never been about revenge. It was about reclaiming peace, not just for himself, but for every quiet student who'd ever kept their head down and swallowed humiliation because no one stood up for them. As he passed, a younger student stepped aside to give him space. "Hey, that was brave," the boy said softly. "What you did yesterday." Jordan paused, offering a small nod. "It wasn't bravery," he said. "It was balance." The boy didn't understand fully. Not yet. But the words stayed with him. By midday, even the teachers had caught on. The bullies who once disrupted every class were suddenly quieter, focused, humbled. Discipline had a strange way of spreading when it was witnessed, not preached. During lunch, Jordan sat at his usual spot. This time, the cafeteria was different. No mocking laughter. No milk cartons thrown. Just conversations. Softer, more respectful, as if the air itself had learned manners overnight. From across the room, Logan looked up once. His jaw clenched, not in anger, but in shame. He knew what he had lost, and it wasn't just a fight. It was control. Jordan didn't meet his gaze. He didn't need to, because true strength doesn't need an audience. It leaves an impression without saying a word. The balance has shifted. The hallways have changed. But peace isn't always permanent. It's tested by what comes next. By the end of that week, Brookhaven High felt like a different world. Not because the walls had changed, but because the silence had. It wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the calm that comes after a storm, when people finally start to understand what strength looks like. Jordan Wells walked through those halls like any other student. No spotlight, no fanfare, no fame. But everywhere he went, people stepped aside. Not because they were scared, but because they understood. He'd done something no teacher, no rule, no speech ever could. He'd shifted the balance, not with noise, not with chaos, but with discipline. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low through the gym windows, he stood there alone. The same court, the same place where it all changed. The floor still carried faint scuffs from that day's fight, but the air felt lighter now. He closed his eyes, hearing echoes of laughter that no longer existed. He wasn't proud. He wasn't angry. He was centered. His sensei's words returned to him. Real power isn't in what you can destroy. It's in what you can protect. He smiled, and because now he understood. Behind him, the gym door creaked open. Logan Pierce stood there, bruises faded, eyes softer. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't tension anymore. It was truth. Logan took a slow breath. "You could have broken me," he said quietly. Jordan looked over his shoulder. "I didn't need to." There was no apology, no handshake, no movie-ending reconciliation, just mutual recognition. Because sometimes respect doesn't need words. It needs time. As Jordan walked home that day, the streets of the city glowed orange under the setting sun. Cars passed, kids laughed, life went on, and he moved through it all quietly, the way he always had. But something inside him had shifted forever. He no longer carried silence as a shield. Now it was his strength, and in that moment, every viewer watching, you, knew the truth too. That sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest lessons. That real courage isn't about fighting back. It's about knowing when to. And that control, real control, changes everything. If this story hit you, if you believe real strength is built on control, not cruelty, type respect over fear in the comments right now. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people can see that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means power, waiting for the right moment to speak, because in the end, they thought he was just another target. But he was the lesson they would never forget.